I do think it's quite substantial. It's a scheme. It's $40 billion. It's something like 10% of their GDP in one scheme. So
Yeah.
that is huge. And if you look at the breakdown, they're spending 10 billion on an airport. They're spending nearly 20 billion on the high-speed rail. There's 600 million on roads. There's another couple of billion on other related projects around. So it is massive, and it is a short time frame. We joke about 2032, but even if they do that all in 10 years, it's pretty significant for the country.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Offsite Podcast. I am Jason Lanzini, joined as always by Carlos Cavallo. Today we are diving into three, if I do say so myself, compelling topics. First up, Poland's ambitious 30 plus billion euro transport mega hub aiming to reshape European connectivity, followed by Motif, a new SaaS platform founded by former Autodesk CEO, challenging the status quo and big blue Autodesk, or that black Auto. They changed the logo. Definitely not red. Was never red. Was blue.
Is this my colorblind going from blue to red?
Yeah, that's the moment to chime in.
That's not a thing, by the way. I never confused blue and red.
The time to chime in and break the pre-read of the episode is on colors, your famously best topic. All right, shall I continue, or do we want to just sort out the reds and blues? Yeah. Okay, cool. Finally, we're gonna dive into a LinkedIn post that reminded us of all the different personas on a construction project and how they interact with technology adoption. First, well, I was gonna say first, but second after I've got that color thing out the way. Carlos, did you spot the 3D printed bridge in Spain in the news?
It's really hard to tell if the article was a bit of a joke or serious, but for anyone listening, or maybe Olu can share the image, there's a very sketchy looking 3D printed bridge. If that was in Barcelona, you wouldn't actually think it was that odd because there's a lot of architecture that looks like that. But when you look at the buildings in the background, it just looks like a shit bridge in the middle of a park.
It looks like a bridge made of styrofoam, or you know when you go to the beach, have you ever done that at the beach where you make you kind of like pick up wet sand and you can kind of like drizzle it to make a tower? Like it's like
it's like a very it's like the worst grade concrete.
There's a meme in that. Oh, this is going on LinkedIn. There's a do you know when you on a concrete on a project, there's like the standards for like concrete finishes,
like the number of the code.
And then you get the concrete finisher come out with the big straight edge trying to explain.
Should we use metal shuttering? Should we use timber? No, let's use toilet roll.
And then, there's a meme of like the concrete finisher being like, "This is in spec."
They're there with the little ruler. But anyway, the bridge. I think the only thing done in situ was the foundation, so they lifted in a 3D printed bridge. But check it out.
When you see things like that, you go, I think traditional methods might still have a bit to go yet.
But well done to them.
All right, diving in. First topic today. So Poland is about to break ground on what might be, allegedly, according to the advertising materials, the boldest infrastructure project in Europe. I feel like I've seen that descriptor on like every project. But the Central Communications Port, or CPK, don't ask why those words don't match up, a 30 billion euro mega hub that brings together a new international airport and a high-speed rail network, has been designed specifically to reshape how people move across the continent. The government are calling it the next Schiphol or Frankfurt, which, to those who don't know Europe in detail, Schiphol is like a hub in Amsterdam or near Amsterdam, and then most people know where Frankfurt is, but that's a big transport hub. Critics call it a political fantasy. It's not like the critics. Today, we'll unpack plan stakes and I guess whether Poland can pull it off. Some details. This is, it's located approximately 40 kilometers southwest of Warsaw. It includes a new airport and about 2,000 kilometers of high-speed rail lines for speeds up to about 250 kilometers an hour. The plan is that these timelines, the construction begins in 2026 and first phase operational by 2032. It's supposed to have capacity for 34 million passengers annually at launch, expanding to 100 million. And the idea is that the high-speed rail links Warsaw with other major cities within a 2-hour distance. I don't know. Carlos, what do you reckon? Is it going to start? Is it going to happen? And, well, this is not a controversial topic. Is it going to finish in 2032?
It's not going to finish in 2032, that's for sure. I'd say the first headline, I can't remember the wording, about, was it the most ambitious in Europe or something like that? I do think it's quite substantial. It's a scheme. It's $40 billion. It's something like 10% of their GDP in one scheme. So that is huge. And if you look at the breakdown, they're spending 10 billion on an airport. They're spending nearly 20 billion on the high-speed rail. There's 600 million on roads. There's another couple of billion on other related projects around. So it is massive, and it is a short time frame. We joke about 2032, but even if they do that all in 10 years, it's pretty significant for the country. But you can see why they're doing it. So basically, I think tourist numbers are going up 20% a year for the last couple of years. So the footfall through the country, not just people traveling through Europe, but actually visiting the country to sort of explore and see the cities, is growing massively. So I think that those tourist numbers, they have to do something. So I think it's highly unlikely it won't happen. It's just how quickly it could happen. Yeah, pretty mega stuff.
In terms of going back to that point you made about like it is a big bet for them, the funding of it is apparently largely from the Polish government. They have requested some amount of funding from the EU, but and then there's some like debt in the mix as well of the funding. But we were talking offline about how the goal here is like some expansion of this 10T rail network in Europe, the importance of Poland as like a hub or a connector across Europe. It seems odd that it's not more EU funding given the broader goals.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see under the hood a bit with that, because it's part of the Trans-European network, that obviously would unlock funding, but you wonder if there's this like give and take on how much you let the EU control what you build based on how much funding they give you. So obviously it's going to be quite hard to find that information, but maybe they wanted to, if they've got the cash to do the majority of it and want to maintain control, maybe you have a lesser bit of funding from the EU as in return. So a lot of the marketing content on this kind of labels it as basically an airport, but it's way more than an airport. 2,000 kilometers of high-speed line is a mega project in itself. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, especially as I think the original completion date was 2028. So it's only been knocked back a few years.
And I should have mentioned, we've talked about it before, but the 10T network, what it is this it's a trans-European transport network. It is a network of rail or road and airports across the European Union. There's some, these things, the numbers are never true, but like allegedly it's like a $600 billion infrastructure plan across the whole of Europe. But yeah, you're right. Maybe the funding is kind of like buried in the detail. One of the things that was interesting on it, as with, I guess, a lot of like nationally significant infrastructure, is the public are the biggest fans of it. I think something like 84% in the local area voted against the thing. Do you think it's like broadly not wanted, or it's just kind of like a not in my backyard? Like, I really want this, just not near me.
I'd imagine they see it as lots of public money spent on infrastructure for tourists. Something like, it was like 80+% of travel in Poland, like long distance travel, is still by car. If you're screaming for public services and everything else that you need as a country, and you spend 10% of your GDP on a hub to pull tourists into Warsaw Airport, you're probably not super thrilled about that. So
I guess the flip side of that is, I don't know if we talked about it in a previous episode, but this idea or this theory of like this multiplier effect on infrastructure spending. Did we talk about this previously, or did I have this conversation offline? This idea that like there's this like there's in economics, there's this concept of a multiplier effect. Some amount of money spent by the government has some larger impact on the broader economy. And so,
like someone said, HS2 will bring half, like whatever amount of money back to the economy after.
Yeah, because you get like the government spends, maybe has a contract for £1 billion, and then that results in some amount of subcontracts being awarded to other companies, and those companies employ people to a greater, like there's some multiplier effect bigger than the initial investment. And there was some studies from folks like in the UK, the OECD as well, and the World Bank, that there's the base multiplier effect is like 2 to 3x. So every dollar you're getting some like economic impact of 2 to 3x, and some can even go up to like 5 or 6. And so, if you're Poland, I guess you're spending this amount on tourists, but just the project alone would have some multiplier effect if you believe the stats. And then obviously bringing tourists to the country has some other long-term economic impact.
Yeah, it's I guess it's the long-term, short-term mindset. So some will say they're going to be way more prosperous in 10 years with a lot more tourism and better transport links. Some would say we need more than that in the next 10 years in healthcare and social services and everything else. So yeah.
But construction beginning next year. So keep eyes peeled. We should return to the subject when some contracts get awarded.
Yeah, I tried to find any sort of early contracts awarded to some of the main contractors that we know. Not much yet. So we'll keep tabs on that.
Yeah, cool. Right, moving on to a fairly juicy topic. So the background here is from a guy who helped build Autodesk into what it is today as this global behemoth. The former CEO, Amar Hansbal, has launched a company called Motif, which is a cloud-based construction design platform built from scratch, basically to fix everything frustrating about Autodesk's design tools. Going from inside the belly of the beast to attacking it. And he has explicitly said in interviews that, rather than trying to beat like an Autodesk Revit on day one, they're taking this strategic route, starting with kind of collaboration tools, starting higher up in the design process in like architectural design, and then kind of progressing down through the stages of a project. And when I looked at it, I've been quite interested in the story. I'm quite interested in their strategy and the tools. And it reminds me a lot of, for those that are not in construction, a software called Figma. So Figma is a collaborative cloud-based design software. It's something that our team and we use. I'd say almost all software seems to be designed on Figma these days. And they didn't invent the idea of it. There was an existing desktop-based solution that existed, or there were a few, Sketch and others. It seemed like overnight they turned up and swept over the industry, starting with this initial point of high-end or high-fidelity kind of like mock-ups of software that the developers will build from. And that this idea of like a collaborative model, web-based, so not having to install software, just made the barrier to entry and the experience so much better. The barrier to entry so much lower, the experience so much better, that they kind of seem to win that market very, very quickly, to the point they almost sold to Adobe for $20 billion. And so I guess the theory and the thing that I'm trying to express is that they solved this one core problem as their entry point and became the preferred tool of choice for a core group of users who are these like designers, which gave them a beachhead to just keep moving further up and down that value chain. And it seems as though there's a very similar strategy afoot here Motif starting with the architectural design, solving a bunch of the collaboration and other pain points with like a Revit, which is traditionally desktop based. If they're able to do that, could very easily get on a very quick roll to move further down into detailed design, construction phase. So I'm very interested in the strategy and their execution and the space. So I don't know, Carlos. What did you think when diving into it, and what's jumping out?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it's not a company I really knew much about. It's not really a space that we are in. And like it seems like they've got this approach, which is instead of this centralized BIM model, which is what a lot of tools focus on, it's this like linking everything related. So it's like distributed data rather than centralized data. So to effectively go up against Autodesk, but without, I guess, the legacy issue that Autodesk will have in trying to compete in this space, if that becomes the dominant way that teams like to obviously work collaboratively in the cloud, it's going to be very hard for that ship to turn at pace without screwing things up for existing customers and having to like pivot quite quickly. These guys should be able to accelerate quite fast. They're backed by, I think, Google, well, Alphabet are one of the main parties in the raise.
Yeah, I think the primary was Redpoint, which is a big US venture fund, and Capital G, but I think the others might be in there as well.
I could see probably in the next few years, they really accelerate in this, probably the smaller to mid-sized firms, because it's going to be really hard to break the big tier ones away from Autodesk at pace. But you'd still bet that they'd be testing it and trying it in the background and highlighting it because they want to keep tabs if it's going to be that sort of impactful or successful. It's a bit like, I think I'd compare it to like trying to break construction away from a P6. They're so ingrained in a tool, it's going to be really hard to change. But I think once the change starts happening, it would be quite rapid because suddenly the bar's so much higher. You can't be left behind.
Yeah,
I think to see what that point there happens.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities to that sort of thing. Like the problem has been known for a long time, and I think a lot of people have viewed, oh well, we're not going to move people, we're not going to move designers out of Revit or whatever it might be that they're using, and so there is an ecosystem of systems out there that, like, through plugins or other things, take Revit models and then take them into the cloud, and there's suddenly like viewers and things in the cloud, or there's like, can we get open standards so that this model in the cloud could, we can download it and make edits, kind of like sync, which feels like like early days of like a Dropbox or something, where you edit something on your desktop and it syncs up a version, and then suddenly everyone just goes, well, why would you do the whole thing in real-time multiplayer in the cloud? And so there's like been a lot of effort and a lot of companies built on the idea of like stuff gets authored in these legacy or incumbent tools, and our job is to help make the designs from those incumbent tools viewable by other people. And this is just like let's just go straight and solve the creation of it problem. And what's different between that and like maybe like a P6 or other things like that is, I think the process of design is inherently collaborative.
Yeah.
Not to say like scheduling isn't, but it's definitely not as, collaborative. It's, someone goes and does something for a bit and then you come back together and look at it.
And obviously there's a huge pool of tools because of that market, which are about making models and that information available in a more simplistic viewer that everyone can access and is relatively low cost.
Totally. And so, that like opens the question of like, okay, in a Mars words, I think in a podcast or an article, he said, if you're gonna come for the king, you better not miss. In his like, but like, okay, so right. So they're going after Revit, but as you said, if they are successful, big if they are successful, there is also a lot of collateral damage along the way with Autodesk and Revit being maybe the biggest market share there for them to go after. But along the way, you've got things like Bluebeam. That's pretty thin as a product. Like Revisto's kind of like a collaborative viewer thing, but it is further down. But I think if you the gatekeeper to this process are the designers. So if the designers move to this thing, it's very easy to share the thing. It's hard to fight from further down the
Yeah.
process.
But it's such a big statement where he's basically saying now we're like in the short term we're going to tackle this like collaboration reviewing thing,
Yeah.
but in the future we'll have a full featured Revit auto
Yeah.
basically. And he's
Yeah.
made such a big statement. He's raised loads of money. He's ex Autodesk. If you're anyone in that market, you can't wait until he's near building the Revit model. You're going to have to start thinking about that now. So it'll be interesting to see the reaction. You'd imagine you're going to start seeing Autodesk releasing like integrations and things to make it look like they're compatible and pushing in that space. But
well, you saw Procore acquire a BIM startup like a handful of weeks ago. So yeah, I think like you've got who's the potential collateral damage. You've got like Autodesk with their construction cloud, which internally they must be thinking, shit, we got to migrate this whole thing cloud ASAP. Because otherwise they do the thing that we were talking about the other week with Oracle and P6, which is like, I'll just make it hard to integrate with, but you're like on a slow path to getting.
I mean, how long does it even take to switch to cloud for a company like Autodesk with that product set? That's not a that's not a quick change, right? Do you think like Autodesk's model was built by, right? Do you think this is already too big? And I don't mean by the value today, but this, if you look at the statements, the amount of money they raised, and this story, do you think it's off the table as something that Autodesk will go and try to purchase?
I don't know that they would. Who knows? They might do. I think it won't happen soon, though. They'd have to show like real serious competitive traction. Yeah, I think so. Unless they're like very scared by it, but I don't imagine so. I think they'll try and do something themselves first, and then realize they're either this other group is struggling or they're a real threat, and they end up then having to buy it. But yeah, you've got the existing, like, let's say subscale players. So like a Revisto or Bluebeam. SketchUp is another one, which was bought by Trimble.
Is that Google?
It was originally, then I think it got spun out, or somehow it ended up being owned by Trimble. And it hasn't really progressed since the early days, which was a similar idea, right? This like collaborative, like that was quite ahead of its time. So yeah, you've got this like, those players are at risk of like really seeing market degradation from this, and maybe struggle, maybe have weaker opportunities to fight back. And then the bigger players, well, like Bluebeam's owned by Nemec Group, but they've not done anything with that tool in so long. I can't see them really suddenly jumping into gear. And then you've got the kind of big companies like Procore and like Autodesk who probably take like evasive action immediately and then watch and then decide. I think it's very interesting. Strategically, it's like there's clear problems. Collaboration is definitely a problem in the design process that could be solved. It seems like a really capable group to solve it. And so it
I'd
probably
imagine
comes down to
poaching the best Autodesk people because it's the way more exciting venture to be part of.
Totally. Yeah. And so, it becomes like now like an execution game. And how long does it take to build, what does like feature parity to start stealing workflows? So yeah, I think it's going to be an incredibly interesting space to watch. And there's a lot of people that will be watching it and working out strategically what to do, because if you wait too late, it'll run away from you.
Yeah, one to keep tabs on. I think I've got he's speaking at something that I'm going to in a couple of weeks, so it'll be interesting to see what he's
they've got teams in the US and I think also in London. Is that because it seems to see a lot of recruiting in the UK?
Yeah.
Wunderbar. Moving on, so final topic this week. We caught a LinkedIn post that hit on something that sparked a discussion internally. This idea, the post in synopsis was that one person on a job, on a construction project, can completely shape positive or negatively, whether new tech gets adopted or it gets killed. It used this like a military analogy of like a strategic corporal to argue that like site level leaders, like superintendents, can make decisions that ripple all the way up to head office. And sometimes they can unlock the biggest productivity gains, and other times they can kind of like be the blocker that shuts down change inside of companies or on projects. And it kicked off a discussion around that topic, and then some of the other personas that you would typically see on a project outside of this like strategic corporal military metaphor. So yeah, I guess what were your thoughts on I guess the original idea of the post off the bat, Jos?
Yeah, definitely. There was always, I guess to describe it as there was always individuals on a project that had this kind of soft power where, like, the bigger projects I worked on, the lead or the work superintendent always had a direct relationship with the project director or senior project manager, and whatever they wanted would pretty much happen because they would have the pitch of, look, it's my guys on site. This isn't going to fly. We're not doing it. So pick the next job. If it was like in the context of using a new tool or a bit of software.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get that person on side, it doesn't matter what the budget was, what the cost was, it's happening. Because if he says it improves safety, if it improves morale, if we're going to be more productive, it's going to happen.
Yep.
There are individuals on a project that have that kind of sway.
Yep.
And even like soft things, like I can remember projects being told by head office, and I worked in joint ventures, so it's a bit harder to enforce certain things. And they'd be like, right, can you try this? And they'll say to us, can someone just like have a look at this? We won't do it if you don't want to. So let's just pretend like we've given it a go or considered it, and then we'll click it back and say no. So there's this relationship between head office and projects. And there's also these mini relationships on a project where you can have super influential people that you wouldn't assume were that influential based on, say, an org chart. So I think it's got some good grounding.
Yeah, I think that like and most people on construction projects will have someone come to mind when they think of this person. So they may not be the works manager or the general superintendent. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're just like a supervisor or an engineer who like kind of is the spirit animal of the project, and they're like the beating heart of it. And when it comes to technology, to getting anything done, that person is like part of, that's where stuff gets done. And technology adoption is no different. Any technology adoption is some degree of behavioral change for people, and so behavioral change needs this person to help to be like, yeah, we're going to do this or we're not going to do this. I've got tons of people coming to mind that I can think of that would be this person. It did get us down a funny rabbit hole of like, well, you get other people that are not like that, that you interact with as a potential on projects, but also as a like technology vendor, and starting to think, if one of them's called, as this LinkedIn post said, Strategic Corporal, what would you categorize the others as? I had a couple that come to mind. I don't know if you had any and who wants to go first, but
I actually didn't even think about that in terms of others. You go.
Okay, well, that moment when the teacher starts you to go, all right, we're going to review the homework.
Like, oh, fuck.
All right. Well, I'll riff off a couple, and then you can run with it from there. So the first one, I don't know what I call him, like the dreamer or something. This is the person that's like super tech forward, innovative, wants to try everything and every tool and every piece of technology, can articulate the problems on a project, I suppose. From a tech vendor perspective, they're the person who seems like such a good lead on a call that, yep, this is the guy or gal who knows exactly the problem. Is the opposite of this strategic corporal, just doesn't carry the team, doesn't have the connection, isn't in a role that puts them as influential, or just doesn't have that respect. And therefore all of the things that they do kind of get nowhere, can't really get off the ground.
Yeah, I
We'll
actually
call
had a
them the
few of these
dreamer.
written down. I completely missed your question earlier, but
Oh, so
one's
this is the I
definitely.
actually did my homework
I
moment.
did, yeah. Surprise, surprise. No,
Yeah,
I
okay.
had
Just enough time for ChatGPT to maybe come up with some.
yeah. There's definitely the kind of young gun champions. Everyone's on projects where you've got a site engineer who thinks they're a project manager. They do everything. They try everything. They're in the ear of the project managers, and if they get behind it, the leadership know that they've got someone that will go and do the stuff that they wouldn't want to manage themselves. So those sorts of individuals are like, also this person will actually pretty much do the job for us, and they're clever enough to manage it.
Yeah, so not miles
Um,
away from, I guess, that strategic corporal type of person
yeah,
to a degree. Yeah. Yep.
but it's kind of the quiet influencer type that I think,
Yes.
um, and that could be like the planning lead that's been at the company for 30 years, or someone that's kind of a bit quiet, but everyone knows construction, has been around for so many years and seen every issue and every job, that it's really hard to ignore them when they sort of say this won't work.
Yeah,
um
like I don't know, strategic council person who like maybe doesn't have any major influence broadly on the project, but for some reason that the
yeah,
key driver person will go to them for what do you think about
yeah.
this thing?
And there's
I
I
can think
remember
of I can think of exactly a person like this on a project
yeah,
who
I
who's
remember being in meetings, and there'd be, on this job there was like 5 or 6 planners. One of
yeah
them is like he's a genius, but no one would know who he was because he doesn't like talk or make himself noticed.
yeah yeah
But if there was a question, the PDA would just sort of look at him and he'd do this tiny little nod. He would like carry on with the thing he was talking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
You get those I'm thinking about some movies where there's like a gang movie and like someone presents themselves as the leader of the gang, but actually someone else in the group is actually the leader
Yeah,
as like
yeah,
a way
yeah.
to not get assassinated. And so while they're
Yeah.
negotiating, they're actually just getting cues from the person really running
Yeah.
the show.
So I was actually thinking of Moneyball when Brad Pitt looks at Jonah, who's the
Yeah,
most obviously
that's it. Yeah,
person,
that's
and he's like,
it. That's
great.
yeah. Okay, so he's not the
That's the
strategic council;
person.
it's Jonah Hill. Okay, that's the
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't seen it, go and watch it. Great movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, the person I'm thinking of was a quality manager, and wasn't a background in
Yeah. It's
quality, but
those information rich people that like they just know the reality of
yeah,
a
yeah,
process or an event. So
yeah,
yeah.
100%. Well, the another one that I had, which was like a version of that dreamer person who was like that tech forward person, but couldn't carry the group. That there's this other person when technology comes onto a project who kind of like hijacks. Let's not call them the hijacker, but they like they hijack.
Yeah.
They like hijack the idea, I guess. So like I don't know, you bring on a project management solution, and there's some part of it that's now like beneficial or has some overlap with safety, and suddenly the safety
Yeah.
team, it has to meet all the safety team requirements. Like it kind
Yeah.
of
Well, the guy with the sticky notes that suddenly realizes the sticky notes are going and then gets behind the new tool, even though they ignored it for 6 months.
I wasn't going to bring specifics in, but yeah. I was thinking of a slightly adjacent, but yeah, the hijacker,
Yeah.
not the hijacker. That's the wrong.
Yeah. We should not say hijack, but
Yeah.
yeah. And then the other one is just like old school blockers. I've been there. I've done it. I don't need this. Waste of time. I know what I'm doing, and I know how to pour concrete.
Yeah. And like those people have like lots of backgrounds that I guess there's the don't need it, don't want it. Like
Yeah.
I did this. I used to do this on a piece of paper 40 years ago. I don't need, I can still do it better. Kids these days don't know how to do X or Y, that kind of part. Then maybe there's like a less skeptical person, the one that's like, I see the problem. We've tried 15 tools for this thing over the last 60 years and they all suck. And I don't want to learn another one.
Why would this be any different?
Yeah, definitely. There's also like the like version of that is they're like not skeptical. They're just like unconfident. They're like, I don't know technology.
Yeah. We're scared to dip the toe in just in case
yeah.
like it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like they just immediately like, oh, I can't even use computers or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think the takeaway is like there's a lot of power in the strategic corporal. So I think it's an interesting idea. And I think it happens, it's true not only for technology adoption, but like probably how most things happen on a project.
Definitely. Right.
Awesome.
We're out of time.
Righto, read us out, mate.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning into today's show. If you did enjoy the episode, please do think about liking the video or following us on your chosen podcast platform. We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.